طيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في القرآن الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات فبشر الصابرين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. أما بعد، السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. Slightly under the weather today with a head cold, so do bear with me today. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran this famous verse, and I have recited it because we all know today is the 9th of Muharram. And we are here, of course, in our minds, in our thoughts, in our conscience, is Imam al-Hussein and the Saga of Karbala. You see, life is an enigma, a mystery, and a paradox. It is always this attrition of life and death, attachment, detachment, fear, hope, to yield some sort of meaning so that when we leave this world, we leave with something of value. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that we will test you. We will surely, definitely test you. And the very first aspect of this verse, and this verse I have recited because a few verses I'm going to share with you today, hopefully, if I can, that relate to and epitomize the spiritual, ethical, religious paradigm expressed in the personage of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam and the event of Karbala. For everything that we want to achieve in this world and the Quran wants to inculcate within us is found within the personality of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. And also within the few hours and few moments from the morning of Ashura to the time of Asr when the Imam gave his final breaths. So the verse says that we will definitely test you. And that is a given. Life, as soon as we are born, we are thrust into a realm of violence, of attrition, of being tested. Tested by the forces of nature, tested by the forces within us and beyond us. Some within our control and some not within our control. And of course, we've heard what is in our control in the lectures we've been hearing over the last few days. So look, we will definitely test you by something, but not by things. Bishay'in. And it means that which is appropriate to the individual. So know that the test will not be ashya, but it will be by the shay that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala considers most appropriate for the individual. So hence, when we come to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, we know that the test which he was given was appropriate to his standing and maqam with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have, of course, some traditions which mention that there is a maqam that Hussein can only achieve, لَن تَنَالْ إِلَّا بِالشَّهَادَةِ, that he cannot achieve except by taking this route. Hence, bishay, there will be something of these things that will test you according to the constitution of your individual self. وَنَقْصٍ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ, by something of fear and hunger. Of course, we all fear all the time. We have fears. Fear of loss of our health, loss of our wealth, loss of our prestige, loss at the ultimate, the loss of our life, right? So those fears are continuously there. But that is negative fear. God always says, as mentioned, do not fear them, even according to the Prophet, فَبَلِّغْ مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ. Do not fear them, but fear me. The question here is, the fear of the world and the fear of the people and the fear is a negative fear. But when it is converted to the fear of God, it becomes awe. It becomes reverence. أَلَا إِنَّ أَوْلِيَاءَ اللَّهُمْ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. They do not fear and they do not have any grief. And then when it reaches another level, it becomes إِنَّمَا Whoever yakhsha Allahu min ibadihi al-ulama. Those people blessed with true knowledge. And here we are not mentioning faqirs or people with turbans or people with khirqa or any sort of dress or anything. We are mentioning people who have knowledge in their being, who are people who are present with that knowledge, who are living that knowledge, who are tasting that knowledge. Because we said that you will be tested. So the test first involves action, and then it involves you having knowledge. But knowledge in a state which is not mere concept, which is not mere images. And then along with that, though, with the love of God, with the fear of God, and when you are faced with the loss of food, of children, of wealth, as the verse says, فَبَشِّرْ الصَّابِرِينَ, and give glad tidings to those who are patient. Patience occurs. You see, all these things, we talk well about ethical prerogatives, of virtues, of morals, of values. But they have no value until we are thrust into the situation which demands our inner self to come to the fore. When we are sat here listening to these lectures, when we are attending the majalis, when we are attending day in, day out, we listen to some great guidance and values and things, but it is only at the time when it demands is made of you to show what your metal is that these things have a meaning. Otherwise, as Iqbal says, and he's mentioning this according to love, but when it is similar that he says that aklo dilo nigah ka murshid awwalin hai ishq na ho to deen o sharh bud qada tasawwarat, that if you do not have love, true love, love of God, attachment to God, fear of God, then religion and Sharia is nothing but an idol of concepts. It's a temple house of concepts. That your mind, tasawwur, you are just thinking these things. God is one, prophet, religion, halal. All these things have no real existential, really living reality within you. So the real test and the real worth of an individual is when they find themselves in a situation which really tests them, which really wants them to tell the truth in a court of law, when it means that they will lose out, or in a moment when they need to speak justice. At that very time, your reaction to the situation will define the status you have with God and the status you have as a human being and the value you will take with you to the hereafter. So in this particular verse, as mentioned, life is in this attrition between good and bad, vice and virtue. And we cannot understand life without the understanding of death. And of course, in the mention of Imam al-Hussein and Karbala, there is nothing but the mention of people losing what is most apparent and most dear, which is dear life. But in this sense, we have the idea of attachment, good attachment and bad attachment. We have the idea of detaching oneself from all that is other than God. Ma siwa Allah. And as we know, hayatud dunya, as you've learned, is everything other than God. Everything we see in the terrestrial realm, even in that which is sometimes the celestial realm. Everything other than God is hayatud dunya. And the Quran makes it very clear about the nature of this hayatud dunya and the type of attachment that we should move away from and be detached from it and have an attachment with God only. So the Quran says, وَمَا هَذِهِ الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا مَتَاعُ الْغُرُورِ. What is this life except something to deceive you? Then it says, وَمَا هَذِهِ الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا لَعِبٌ وَلَحْوٌ. That it is nothing but something which is entertainment and a diversion. Then in Surah Al-Takathur, Al-Hakmu Takathur, you are diverted by increasing and multiplying things. Take a look at the prophets of God and the awliya, and specifically Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Out of all the prophets, of course, Sayyiduna Sulaiman alayhi salam had a great kingdom according to the Quran. And you could see that when you visit the place. But all of the prophets, what did they ascribe value to? We mention them, we talk about them, but following their footsteps is very, very difficult. And especially the footsteps of Imam al-Hussein. They did not leave any wealth specifically. They did not build any palaces. They did not increase and multiply in the way that we think about and what causes us fear, distress, agony. And if we lose it, we start doing complaining to God. But patience here, the first meaning is when you have anguish in your heart, is to curb that and not complain to God, but yet say to God, thank you. And that is the status of Hussein alayhi salam. وَبَشِّرْهُمْ الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مَصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. That give them the glad tidings that upon such people who go through these tests, who lose wealth, who lose children, who lose everything, but yet at the end of it, they say to God that indeed we are from you and to you we return. And that is the status of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. We have that verse, يَا أَيَّتُهَا النَّفْسَ الْمُطْمَئِنَّةُ ترجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي. And Imam al-Sadiq had said that this is known as the verse or the Surah Al-Fajr of Hussein alayhi salam. Why? Of course, there's discussions of the soul and everything, but what is itminan? Just look on the day of Ashura. Imam al-Hussein has lost all his family. He has lost his kith and kin. He has lost everything that is seemingly dear to an individual. And of course, naturally, the human bodily tendency is to feel that. He could feel the pang of loss. There's no doubt. It is not as though he was immune and immunized to pain and grief and sorrow. Indeed, as a human being and the most loftiest of human beings, he felt pain, grief, and sorrow because human beings are more than just purely rational creatures, but they are emotional creatures with feelings and affections. And anyway, he has given everything. He is in a state of utter despair according to every individual who would look at him. But yet, the enemy say that he, despite having blood all over himself, having wounds, having his clothes being torn, etc., that he looked like a shining moon. He looked so grand. He looked so honorable. He looked so dignified. Because this was the beginning of the journey of Hussein alayhi salam. When it says, Ya ayyatuha nafs al-mutma'inna, come back to me, O content soul, and enter into my servants and enter into my heaven, it is not saying that this is the end, it is the beginning. For Hussein knows that he has gone from this is attachment and detachment. For all our lives, we seek something, we always move something, we always desire something. Singers sing about love and desire and want. But ultimately, it is that boundlessness that they seek. The boundless ocean of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, although this cannot be expressed in words. And that is why Hussein alayhi salam epitomizes the enigmatic nature of life. That mystery that you cannot put your finger on, although you can feel it. And that is why the mourning and the remembrance of Hussein is so unique. And he has bequeathed to the world with the energy that he has, his blood going into that soil, the soil of the earth, and becoming organic matter and giving life to human beings. In this sense, that in this verse, God says, we have patience. We spoke about patience. فَبَشِّرَ الصَّابِرِينَ. And of course, this is min azmi al-umur, as the Quran says. One of the greatest things is patience. We speak of the patience of Ibrahim with Ismail. We speak of the patience of Ayub. We speak of the patience of Yaqub. But Hussein alayhi salam here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that he is not just mutma'in, but also at this time that he has radiyatan mardi, that he is at a level beyond patience now. That at this point that you say, Alhamd, at the level of not just curb yourself from complaining to God, you are now saying, thank you, God, for this. Thank you for refining me. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. And the night of separation has gone and the day of union has arrived. And then the final ending this, the verse says that enter into my servants, enter into my heaven. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives this unique status to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. After all this, is that come into my Jannah. Jannati is very different from Jannatun tajri min tahtiha al-anhar, that they are rivers flowing and enter heaven. And it is very different to that. God is saying, my own, come into my Jannah. A very unique status. And this is what we learn from Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, that the meaning of life and the secret of life lies in these aspects, which are non-material, in attachment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in hope with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, this was no frivolous attempt where he was just going to be killed. That is just like wishful thinking and caprice, where you throw seeds and expect them to take root and produce fruit. And this was hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which means having understanding. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا محمد المصطفى وآله الطيبين الطاهرين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Just continuing with this theme and a few words. It is important to understand that, of course, we have spiritual, mystical, philosophical insights into the life of Imam Hussein and the epic of Karbala, but it is also a very pragmatic, practical step towards reformation. Indeed, in the very words of the Imam himself, he spoke about that I have not risen. And this is the beauty of this, because Imam al-Hussein Hassan did a sulh, he did a treaty. Imam al-Rida became the Wali al-Ahad of Ma'mun. Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq and Imam Muhammad al-Baqir produced the greatest dissemination of knowledge on the back of the events and of Karbala and the political. So in this, we learn that wisdom is very important, and how we act in or we take on the challenges of the present. Each Imam had one goal, which is to bring justice, to teach godly values. But each one went about it in a particular way. And Imam al-Hussein rose because this was the tadbir. This was the not just the wisdom. It is not always about being necessarily right. It is about how you convey the truths. لو كنت فظا غليظ القلب لانفضوا من حولك. That if you were coarse and if of a bad nature, they would all disperse from you, despite being a prophet of God. Despite being man endowed with truth, revelation, and nothing but the truth, even no matter how much he had the truth, if he was of a coarse nature and he did not have the right deliberation and how to approach the situations, they would disperse from him. Similarly, Imam al-Hussein, the time demanded he rise. His spirit, his nature, his constitution did not allow him to stay at home, and because he saw things had reached such a state. And this was the wisdom of the Imam itself. Although the people of Kufa had called him there, he was approaching them because he had received many letters from them. He was going there, but he saw that his path had been hindered by the army. And therefore, I think it's an invitation for all of us to read the words of the Imam, the sermons he gave from place to place, station to station. And these words have been preserved to a certain extent. And you can glean from how the Imams would speak anyway, if you were to read their words and be acquainted with them. Just as you would see a verse of the Quran, in between prose, you would know this is a verse of the Quran. You would know that the Imam is speaking. Sometimes you can understand when you continuously read their words. The Imam, he said some slogans, and those slogans are everlasting, immortalized slogans for all human beings for all times. Hayhatu minna dhilla. If you do not believe in religion, you do not fear an afterlife, كونوا أحرارا في دنياكم. Be free people in this world. These are immortal claims and emblems and slogans that we must embody within our vision of the world and our vision of our community. The Imam said, I have not come for dhulm or fasad or anything like that, بل لطلب الإصلاح في أمتي جدي, to bring about reform in the community. And therefore, I think it is beyond the remembrance of Hussein. It is one only small aspect of the remembrance of Hussein, which is mourning, beating chests and whatnot. But the bigger, more grand picture of the Husseini message is that which is for all peoples. It cannot become a cult. It cannot become a ritualized cult of remembrance of Hussein, which deters others from coming and joining the ark of salvation, which is Hussein ibn Ali. As the poet ending with these words, there's a lot to have been said, and in fact, I haven't even said half the stuff I prepared due to this head cold, is that Josh Mali Haba, these famous words. We know Mu'inuddin Chishti said that Shah asked Hussein, Badshah asked Hussein, Hussein is king, and he had become the very foundation of La ilaha illallah. But this poem, everyone's heard it, I'm sure. That he says, Kya sirf Musalmanon ke hi pyare hain Hussein, charkhe nauhe bashar ke tare hain Hussein, insan ko bedar ho lene do har qaum pukaregi hamare hain Hussein. That is Hussein just the beloved of the Muslims? He is the shining star in the firmament of humanity. Let every human being wake up and become conscious. He will claim Hussein is mine. And this is the true message of Hussein alayhi salam. Of course, everything else is a part and an aspect of the remembrance of Hussein, but the overarching message should never be clouded by anything which is counterproductive to it. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد المصطفى وعلى أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب وعلى سيد شباب أهل الجنة الحسن المجتبى والحسين الشهيد بأرض كربلاء ولعائمة المسلمين من ذرية الحسين علي بن حسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وحلي بن محمد وحسن بن علي والحجة الخلف الهادي والمهدي عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف وجعلنا من أعوانه وأنصاره والمستشهدين بين يديه. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.